when I got fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue when I was 21, my prison justice collective were like, oh, you're sick. Oh, you can't do the mailing? Bye. There was no meal train, there was no Indiegogo. I was an immigrant to Canada at that point, and because of ableist immigration legislation, if you're disabled, you can't get in legally. So I couldn't use the healthcare system for a lot of reasons. And I had this altar in my room, and I had these tarot cards that I started reading when my first girlfriend got suicidal. And I was reading these weird books by herbalists from the library, and I was like, oh, I can't afford medicine or access it, but I can put dandelion root in vodka, and that's going to detox my liver. And everyone was like, you're weird. And then what do sick survivor femmes do a lot of the time? I get a job working at a crisis line, because I was like, yeah, you know, this would be chill. And I got my work visa, and I went from house cleaning. And then I was reading cards on the street when my phone was about to get cut off. You know, I was, right? And, you know, and then I was surviving an abusive relationship, and people would come to me in our little POC community being like, I hear you have a situation. I also have a situation, right? And I was working, when I, you know, got a job that was not house cleaning or telemarketing, I was working at maybe the worst acronyms organization ever. Wait for it. REC, the Women's Counseling Referral and Education Center. And it was like, people would call me like, I'm calling REC because I'm a REC. And people, that's not funny. And I'm like, okay. Like a lot, we were, I mean, this is 1998, we defined ourselves as a multicultural, that was the language of the day, queer, feminist, therapy, resource center, and crisis line. And what we were doing was we were hustling the state for money. And we were, this is before the internet really, you know, we had like dial-up, so people needed feminist therapists, they called us. And we had these feminist therapists, and we were like, okay, you want clients, you have to see people for free or for $5. So we can make it accessible to people who are on welfare, who have no money, and you need to be accessible, you need to be anti-racist. We grilled them about their sex worker politics, and we grilled them about whether they thought pills were the only solution. Yeah, and then, you know, we had a lot of internal drama, and you know how it goes. And then eventually it was like a collective where someone forgot to file the report, so we almost lose all the funding. Yeah. I'm gonna try and keep this quick. I probably am already over time. I want to say that, like, I was doing that. I was in what we call the psychiatric survivor movement in the 90s in Toronto, which was a whole bunch of people, predominantly like this, black women, women of color, and indigenous women who had been labeled as crazy, who were doing organizing as crazy people for human rights, for the right to be crazy in public, and also to heal. I was part of Dish Pardish, which was a radical queer South Asian organization where we had these wheelchair accessible free tokens, childcare, things about healing in our communities as immigrants in 1999. And I still just was like, I don't know, healing, am I really a healer? And then fast forward to 2010, I saw Kara Page say at the Healing Justice PMA, if our movements themselves aren't healing, there's no point to them. And I was like, I'm gonna go back home to where I was living in Oakland at the time and figure out how to do that. And I, you know, like many disabled people of color, I was very closeted about my disability because I was like, I can't afford to be out about it. And then I found Sins Invalid, which is a collective of disabled, black and brown, queer, sexy freaks talking about eugenics, colonial system, Harriet Tubman, resistance and desire. And I was like, oh shit, that's my disability story. You know, it's not a white story, it's a brown story. And I started putting that together. And then the thing I really want to pull out was about being in Detroit for Healing Justice Space, and also for being creating Collective Access, which is a group of all creation. Yes! 2010, we were like, how the fuck are we going to survive the social form as disabled people of color? And then we're like, we can help each other. And I want to say that from the beginning, there's been a cross-pollination between sick and disabled, queer and trans, black and brown folks here, and healers. And we really challenged the idea of what healing is. And we're like, healing does not mean being fixed. It does not mean being able-bodied. It does not mean being fucking normal. And we as Crips know how to fucking survive the system because we've been locked out of it. And I'm going to stop there and say more later. Oh, and then I had a tarot card business that paid my rent, and I was like, this is really weird. Cool. So, 11:58. We're gonna maybe try and do some like critical questions and thoughts we have about the work, and then open it up. This session should be twice as long as it is, but we're gonna make do with what we have. Can I just pop off the critical questions thing real quick, because I'm hot? Okay. I worry that healing justice is going to forget about disability the more popular it gets. There are so many disabled and sick people who used to be here who aren't here anymore because it's too hard to travel. We're organizing in our own ways. It's really, my friends who are chair users are like, I'm not going to get on a plane and they're going to break my device. I'm newly out as autistic. I'm like, wow, I used to just drink a lot of coffee. Now I'm surrounded by 30,000 people and I'm like, I got to go lie down. I know healing justice centers that have become more institutionalized that are still up a flight of stairs. You know, I worry all the time that if sick and disabled people aren't there yelling at everybody else, that everybody else forgets about us. I worry that as we professionalize, it becomes more like, no, let's just get you the pills and fix you, and not be like, I'm going to be sick for the rest of my life, but I have a fucking awesome life. I'm going to stop there. Yeah.
I want to say, I'm so glad you're raising this because I feel like it's actually this issue is really connected to this broader issue in our movements about how we interact with critique. Because I think one of the things that, in that dynamic exactly, it's sick and disabled folks who are having to do all of this like critiquing of spaces and continuing to be treated as though their critique of those spaces is in some way fucking up everyone else's good time. And it's just like, you know, so I feel like there's just this broader problem in our movements that we don't know how to interact with critique as a gift. And I feel like one of the things that healing justice continues, I mean, healing justice exists because of a need to critique, right? And so, yeah, I just wanted to thank you for naming that.
I remember my last thing. All these collectives that were here, I believe in Flame and Wane, and I actually remember talking to someone who's in the front row about like, where do they all go? And you were like, a little bit of money would help. So many of these collectives, I'm going to name this, are run by femme labor that's unpaid. We need to be fucking paid. I'm not saying that we need the Ford Foundation to give us $1 million though.
But if you're in here,
but I want to figure out a way that we hack capitalism where we don't burn out 90 minutes into it. Yes.
One, I want to say, I want to give props and love to anyone who is a part of the Kindred Southern Healing Justice Collective. Sonali Sadike, if you could stand up, Shira Hassan, one of our advisory committee members, Alexis Dunn, who's somewhere in the building. Just want to honor the leadership. To Aurora Levin Morales, thank you very much. We've done deep study together, and I want to invite folks to study. There's an incredible amount of writing, and we have to show rigor in our practice to study. Now I'm going to flip to the funder side. The first person to fund, by trade, I'm a cultural artist, memory worker, and a poet. And the first funds that I got to do any sort of healing justice work when I was even like conceiving some kind of collective idea was from another artist who, by way of Patty Byrne from Sins Invalid, and birth worker organizer, a major donor. There was one individual with wealth who said, I could put $1 on that because we could not find funds for disability justice work, any kind of cultural arts work that had to do with disability justice, and anything to do with healing that we would define for ourselves by learning about people of color and indigenous folk. That being said, from there, what I've watched is a philanthropy field creating a huge, what they always do, and mind you, I'm working at a funding institution, is like, how do we not idealize one idea of health and wellness? And I'm seeing all this money getting poured into one concept of somatics. I want to say somatics is indigenous to all cultures all over the world. There's not one institution that has a pillar on that. And there's not one institution that has a pillar of practice that is only one practice. So what I want to offer is, because what I'm also seeing is healing justice becoming somatics, like in this way that doesn't feel organically inclusive to many communities. So I just want to offer, there are many somatic practitioners in this room, no diss, you hear what I'm saying? Somatics is indigenous to all cultural communities, and we cannot idealize one idea of being well. It goes right back to everything we're trying to deconstruct. I also want to challenge our ableist language around wholeness. Bullshit. And another piece that I think is very important is that some of us cannot be funded because we are actually trying to decolonize a eugenic framework and institutions that have institutionalized and pathologized us and tested us and continue to experiment on us. The term healing justice, when I first used it, actually was in a meeting with Transjustice, what am I saying? TGIJP, Miss Major, Vanessa Wong from Justice Now. We had just written a statement against eugenic practices in prisons. Hard to find now. I can't fucking find it. I don't even know who's got that statement now. And talking to Miss Major, Vanessa, and several other people whose names I can't recall, we talked about what are we going to do with the testing experimentation going on in our bodies that people aren't talking about in the anti-violence, LGBTQ, liberation, racial justice, anti-poverty movement. If we're not understanding scientific technology and its uses of state control on our bodies, why are we not in the fucking streets? Because the Human Genome Project has existed for over a decade. I'm very troubled that the National Institute for Health is holding our DNA that has been taken non-consensually. That is part of healing justice. That Garden Rule statement, that anti-eugenics in prison statement, that is part of our work.
Yes.
So sometimes let us not count on funding for something that actually we're trying to fucking do underground. I've never wanted to bomb a building until I went to the National Institute of Health. I was very troubled what was in that building and what can be coercively used. But to think that sterilization abuse is in the past, bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. And to think that we're not understanding the role of state control through technology, and I love science, but it's abusive use of it to colonize, an extension of state control and colonialism and anti-Black racism. We have to understand this is critical to our work in healing justice. We are not doing the work anymore.
So I have a couple critical, I don't know if they're questions or concerns. So I'm currently a part of a project called Just Practice, which is working to practice community accountability, and it's practice. It is not an expert-led project. It's a practice-led project. And so one of the ongoing questions and concerns and fears that I have in the healing justice world is that I can't think without doing. Like I do it and then I'm like, okay, let me just jot that down. Which is why I can never like bake the same thing twice. So that's practice, right? And what I get really concerned with in community accountability and healing justice and trust, I'm just going to overlap them because they're so integrated. And coming from like deep harm reduction, where like someone didn't hand me a clean syringe, I'd be dead now, right? When I was like 16. So like coming from like deep practice, which harm reduction is just like super practice, I'm very concerned that we've merged this idea of politic and practice, and that we think that they're the same. And I don't know what to do about it, except now I just keep saying it all the time, is that it does. And so I just want to name, like healing justice is a practice. Yes, it's a critique and it's an analysis, and we need all of that. So I'm not trying to distance ourselves from the importance of thinking about it and writing it down, because boy, do we need to write shit down. And so write shit down, that's not a question, write shit down. And then the other thing is, like, how do we, I'm weirded out by self-care language and community care language. And there was like this issue that happened in Chicago that I think bounced off. I'm not on the internet anymore, so I don't know where it went, but there was this moment around self-care and community care that was really hard, where the community care, I'm just describing what happened in our town, I don't know how it happened in your town, but the community care people came for the self-care people. That's what happened. They were just like, self-care is not enough, you have to take care of each other. And we're like, excuse me, fuck you. Like, we were raised to not believe that we have a self. Can we just get a little bit back? And then, also, I know how to take care of your ass. I've been taking care of your ass your whole life. You didn't even know it. So I worry, and that is like part of the politic, not the practice. And so then what I worry about this, so then the tension, right, of like, I deserve to take care of myself, and then you telling me that I have to take care of the whole community, and then me telling you I'm already taking care of the community. And so like this whole dilemma that results in like everyone staying home because we can't get on the plane, right? And so I don't know what to do about that dilemma. Like how, and I don't even know if am I clear? Mm-hmm.
actually not just going to do a 5 minutes for questions. We're going to have 22 minutes for questions, which is still not enough, but you know, it's better than a lot of conferences. So we might also think of other things, but like, hi, y'all have, do people have stuff they want to ask or say or share? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Cassandra. Thank you so much. I was a little bit late, so what I heard was really informative and helpful. I'm curious about some resources for the legacy. You mentioned this like psychiatry movement, because I see what I'm addressing is the like connecting the colonial violence with the domestic violence in the Puerto Rican diaspora and also on the island. And I'm also overwhelmed that from all the groups I've like worked in solidarity with, there's like the constant conversation around foster care. So I'm wondering, what are some resources for this like mental health and starting this? Because a lot of the work that I've done is just on my own. So I'm like really, I'm in movements and Puerto Rican like collectives and things like that. But when it comes to mental health and my experience with DCF, it's always just been mobilizing by myself. So I want to integrate that knowledge, get it, like just release a Zion this week, something, but I don't want to reinvent a wheel. And I feel like I'm in the Boston area, so the medical industrial complex is really heavy. And also the police brutality associated with mental health is a really big issue in our community. So in my experience of like getting this work, it's really slow because I end up either triggering someone else or there's someone else who doesn't want to talk about it yet. So I want to kind of connect with the broader community and then keep planting those seeds so when the soil's ready where I am locally, it can grow.
Thank you so much for everything you're doing around foster care. I just want to speak to that one part. I know your question was much bigger than that. So Young Women's Empowerment Project, so many of us had a history of either, I wasn't in foster care, but I had a lot of children's services in my family and in my life. And then we had so many people up throughout Young Women's Empowerment Project who were foster care all the way. And so I want to, or at least group homes and children's services all the way. So I just want to name that like our healing justice work, we started this campaign called Healing in Action. And so I want to offer that so many young people in foster care are doing healing justice work right now, like every second. And that what I want us to do is ask them what they're doing. Like, and so what we figured out is we needed to write down what we were all doing and then get the next layer of things. So the thing we were all doing was like we were all taking care of our own freaking downtown itch, right? Like we were all figuring out how to deal with the yeast infection. We were all figuring out how to deal with stomach and anxiety and depression. Like that was stuff we were figuring out, either because we were self-injuring, which is super fucking helpful, or we were, you know, like whatever we were doing. And then we needed like the next level up. We needed to level up what we were doing. So if we were doing self-injury, we needed wound care advice and kits. And so if we were dealing with anxiety, we actually, Tunisia Jaggernaut taught us how to make our own pills from things we could find at the corner store. And like we went through the corner store and looked through the corner store and seriously, field trip, corner store. What's in here and what's medicine? And what's the thing we can keep in our pocket so that the social worker doesn't take it, right? And so I just want to say that I'm sure you're already doing some components of that, like I'm sure you are, and then we need to like write it down and ask the question more broadly, and we can transfer that to everything that we're doing, all the organizing work that we're doing. Every single, and I think everyone up here is really good about that, is that like there's not an expert in healing justice. What we need to just be doing is like documenting what we're doing all the time to heal so that we can be like, hey, we leveled up this one thing, so maybe you leveled it up in a different way, like let's swap so that we now have 3 ways we leveled up, you know? And yes, and like foster care stuff has to be super DL and super tricky, but I just wanted to thank you so much for bringing it to the room because it's a huge part of it. And also check out Street Youth Rise Up, which is doing a lot of work with foster care around healing justice stuff. Dominique McKinney is running it out of Chicago, and it's about to blow up a little bit more. It's already, you can get to it through youarepriceless.org. All of our campaign stuff and healing justice stuff is on there. Boom.
You are priceless.
youarepriceless.org. A couple other resources specifically around mental health. I want to shout out our Rest for Resistance QTPOC mental health project online. Down Chatterjee. Icarus Project has been holding it down for radical mental health for a really, really long time. There's a lot of Icarus people in the room, and they really had a leadership change where there's POC leadership, and there's a lot of decolonization, and also like doing a lot of stuff. I know they have a webinar this weekend about, okay, if someone goes into mental health crisis and you don't want to call 911 because you don't want them to die, what do you do? So they have really tons of resources online. And in fact, I'm just going to start, please nobody take this, but put your email address here in this Gmail thing, and we'll send you a bunch of resources after, because there's a lot. Yeah, thank you. Freedom Project Western Mass is a sex survivor-led community organization that also has some stuff that makes Toby up.
Also the National Queer and Trans Therapists of Color Network. Yeah.
We're also in the house.
Also in the house.
And one of our folks is in Boston. So,
Yeah.
so.
Oh, cool.
Thank you. Hi, my name is RJ, pronouns they, them, theirs. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about Southern specific healing justice work.
Yeah. Okay. Again, I started with, were you here when I started? Kindred, Southern Healing Justice Collective, is a regional collective of healers. Sonali, are you in here? I thought you were in here. Oh, here in Spirit. Okay. Sonali, who's one of the practitioners and co-organizers of it. Currently on hiatus. I would say that we're waning probably, but I guess what I want to say is we realized that the work that we started, I'm going to give a quick of it, is that before, let's see, what's the best thing? I think I'm just going to name campaigns, because I don't want to take all the time here. We worked on grief and trauma and burnout on the Troy Davis campaign, the execution of Troy Davis with the Amnesty International Southern Office. We worked with Gulf Coast organizers after Hurricane Katrina and Rita. We looked at, we flipped our whole thing on organizing around mobilization during migrant justice and racial justice marches and rallies in the early 2000s. We started working with Project South and Song on always providing a healing justice practice space on or near rallies, and always having a mobile wellness team with at least one nurse or a medic on call with another healer. We also started training organizers basic aid, just like what you can put in your pocket, same idea. What you can put in your backpack, from water to how you deal with if someone has they're diabetic, or having juice in your bag, just like basic things. You can have things to intervene on what's it called, pepper spray, just like kits that we started to put in our backpacks as part of a mobile wellness team. And then I think, beyond the U.S. Social Forum, for 10 years, 2007 to 2017, we actively held different circles, healing circles, grief circles, tons of healing justice practice spaces. But let me be clear, the Southeast is huge, as you know. So what we also did was we tried to find our folks. And we started to try, much to what National Queer and Trans Therapists of Color Network is successfully doing, we started to do a database loosely, which really was an Excel spreadsheet. And it was, I think the bigger piece of that is how you gather story. I believe much of this work is memory work, as to what a lot of us said here. Some people are so underground because in the Bible Belt, they are criminalized for their practice, right? Many of us have been removed from our traditions. Some of us have been incarcerated for our traditions. So getting to the real deep nitty gritty of who's doing what, we took the word healing off. We had to fuck with how we talk about it, so other people felt included, including spiritual and faith-based leaders, cultural workers, curanderas, witches, you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm sure you know. So we had to open it up on who we were looking for and how we did that. And so slowly started to create, I wouldn't say a database, a slow sort of understanding of who's on the ground when crises would arise. And I think my deepest learning was when there was a shooting, trigger warning, there was a shooting in, I'm sorry, I think it was Tennessee or Alabama, but who targeted LGBTQ folks at a church. And I called the church immediately and was like, we have a few people on the ground there, and they said, what are you talking about? And I was like, we can bring some people, or we know some people that could hold the grief and trauma you're holding. And they're like, yeah, we have pastoral care. We have a full network of grief counselors throughout our church. And I was like, oh, damn, all right, let's talk. Because they have serious infrastructure. And I was like, well, how are you critiquing, or how are you understanding how you may have excluded certain people based on who they are in community, like LGBTQ? Like, are they getting grief counseling? And they were like, well, no, not really. So like, how do we even have that conversation? I also met with a ton of migrant justice organizers in Tennessee, through, I'm forgetting the name of the organization, Turk. Yeah. And what really came out of that is, unfortunately, is that we weren't thinking about interpreters as healers. And we had some deep conversation around and props to my brother and comrade Roberto Piedena, who's doing language justice training. How does that integrate as healing? And so had some deep, like, tearful conversations on like, how are we holding the role of interpreters on the front lines for community seen as healers as well, and how are they being held? So that's some of it. Let's get into it. Kindred is going to be writing a 10-year retrospective of what we learned and what we're still learning. Because the thing of it is, the South got totally removed from healing justice. Sorry, that's the real deal. And the global South, we were starting to have conversations with people in the global South, in Central and South America. We were tracking stuff going on, and it wasn't getting told. We purposefully stopped moving in national spaces and completely lost our street cred, because we were only down in the South doing small rural towns. People were like, well, what are you doing? We're like, we're holding healing circles, and we've got to trust that this is right. And I'm sorry that we can't explain it, but now we don't talk about it. So, more conversation, because you run Trans Buddy, you work with Trans Buddy in Nashville, and that shit is dope. You should say what that is. Okay. Yeah, talk about the medical industrial complex. Y'all are like deconstructing trans healthcare.
So I'll talk about both Turk and workers' dignity. So Turk in Tennessee, there's been some of the most recent raids happening in rural Tennessee, Morristown specifically. So SONG, Southern Mirrors on New Ground, along with Turk, which is our Tennessee Immigration Refugee Coalition, as well as Workers' Dignity, which is a worker center, immigrant justice-led organization. It's a collective of folks, multiracial organization. So both of those folks have been on the front lines when it comes to immigration justice issues and Latinx erasure in our communities, as well as Black immigrant work, and that kind of justice healing work. So those are two great organizations to check out in Tennessee. The work that I do at Trans Buddy, it's a trans healthcare initiative in the South that started trans-led for trans people by trans people, that eventually got funding from the Vanderbilt Hospital in Nashville, Tennessee. So we function on on-call service. We have a hotline where folks can call us, and they're coming from all sorts of places in the South to seek access to healthcare in Nashville. We are a hospital that is on the HRC index. That doesn't mean shit, but for most folks who are looking for LGBTQ welcoming and affirming healthcare providers, they look at the index to see where it's going to be a hospital that can treat me fairly and equitably. So we are on that index. But the Trans Buddy program started by trans people for trans people, and it's basically like, I call it doulas for trans people. So the work that we do is accompaniment during medical procedures and medical appointments. This does not have to be transition-related healthcare. It includes transition-related healthcare, but it's also for trans folks who happen to be trans and have HIV or high blood pressure or diabetes, or are coming into the hospital for a mental health appointment or psychiatry, or are checking themselves into the psychiatric facility and want visitors while they're staying there. We go and visit folks. This is for trans adults and trans youth as well.
Okay.
Can I make a comment? This incarnation of the Icarus project is very rooted in the South, with Kihu Farouk, Jessica in North Carolina, Rihanna Anthony, Tennessee. We are working with Highlander Center, and we're also working with TIRC in responding to the ICE race. So if you are in the South, we are a bilingual team. Diego Barrera was forgetting. If you want to join healing in rural South, in particular with immigration, find us.
There's a question over there. Is there somebody waiting?
I know there's a lot of people waiting too, so if there's just like one person who wants to answer this question. But I was curious about what's a belief or an approach to the world that not a lot of people here may know about widely. It might just be like an intuition in your head that you're feeling. But I love that people have been kind of talking about like edges where you feel kind of confused about. I love that, Shira. So what is a belief or an approach that you think would change the way we organize in a needed way? That's something that would clear things up. Someone who I really look up to, Susan Raffo, often talks about the original wounds and how we can address like genocide and colonialism and slavery, that a lot of the other wounds will be a lot easier. And that was like a pivotal way to think about healing for me. So I was wondering if you all have any of these kind of like really pivotal things that either have like proven to continue to be really clear ways to approach the work that you do, or if there's anything that's like on your horizon that feels like this is where we are, and this feels something that's needed.
Thanks for bringing Susan Raffo into the room, who is one of the co-organizers. There's many co-organizers in this room for the U.S. Social Forum, Detroit, People's Movements, Stacey Aaron Gardner as well.
Oh, is this gonna be our, I was just gonna say, do we wanna stack more questions or do we wanna?
It's 12:25.
Wants to check this out.
I mean,
Thank you so much for that question. And as I say this, if something comes up for you, grab the mic. So, very quickly, for those of you who know Alexis Pauline Gums, and for those of you who don't, it's a good
Know
idea to
her.
write to know her. Right. So Alexis and I were talking about the medical industrial complex. And we were talking about how often research about our bodies and who we are happen in academic settings, and that research is important. And we don't want to deny that, but they also talk about how we use a certain percentage of our brain. I was telling you this yesterday, Cassandra. How we use a certain percentage of our brain, and that really, they can't measure how much we use of our brain, because what's happening is we're using all of our brain. So whatever is we're talking about up here is being informed by what's going on and coming through all of us. And there's no way to measure that. There's no way to measure that in the institution. There's no way to measure that, what we've been doing and what we've been using and utilizing forever, and that we know in the institution. And so I'm grateful for research when we were talking about that many of us are there and that we need to keep doing that work. But really, we know how to use 100% of what we all have. We just can't, they can't quantify it for us. So thank you for being part of utilizing is a strange word. Give me another one. Yeah, using. Yeah, thank you for being part of informing us up here and letting it come through. Peace.
Real quick, we need all of it. We need community, and we need people who go into hospitals. The community can save us. The community can't save us alone. in dealing with like mental health, psychic crisis, like there's so much focus on in my world on like get your friends together and hold somebody. And then I know a lot of people were like, we got burnt out and we had to go to the hospital. We felt like we failed. And it's like, no, we need patient rights laws supporting our right not to have electroshock and forced treatment. And we need the community spaces, and we need the spaces where you go and it's not your two best friends. It's somebody who doesn't know all your stuff who's taking care of you. We need breaks. We need to not feel like we single-handedly have to save everybody because we can't, you know? And we need to do all of it. It's pills and herbs and prayer and doctors and Medicaid and care teams. It's all of it.
So right, but we need to dream, and everyone in this room and folks that we know, we need to be in conversation with each other. I know myself being on the inside, having been trained as a medical doctor, the institutions in which we train are oppressive, and the work we come out to do and the lens in which we can see things are very narrow. And so there's been a number of folks in my life who have opened my mind to how to bridge and work with healers and organizers in different ways. And I just hope that we can all take from here. There's so much magic in this room, there's so much magic in the world. How can we dream together and really take this moment to continue networking? All the work that everyone's doing is what inspires me to continue doing the work that I'm doing and think outside the box even more than we are already doing. So same with everyone here, and we can really dream and build things differently as we move forward. That's so critically important.
I just wanted to do really quick. Looking at Standing Rock as an example of a American Healers Council that's now in collaboration with UCSF and building out indigenous medicine as a sovereign project that's tied to political movement, and also is taking resources that is indigenous led, and following the lead, like in that same line, following the leadership of indigenous activists that are claiming no ban on stolen land, and thinking outside of the United States and understanding that decolonial liberation is not going to come from the rights and recognition of the United States, and actually taking this collapse of the United States that everybody's all excited about as an opportunity to bolster indigenous sovereignty and to think about what it would look like, a future would look like without the United States in North America.
So to close us, I want to share something very exciting. It's just an idea that we might have a healing justice convening in 2020. We think we might be ready for it. Like its own thing, not attached to another conference event, but its own convening. So yeah, we're like, we might be ready right now, but 2 years is a good timeline in terms of figuring out how we're gonna pull it together and get all the money. So, but we also want to see what the real interest is. So there's these beautiful little cards that are basically a survey to gauge people's interest, excitement, and capacity for being a part of something like that. And they are in the back corner. Griffin is holding them up. Thank you, Griffin. So if you could fill these out and then leave them here in the space with us, the Healing Justice team that is coordinating this year. Oh yeah, you could also go off with it into the grass and really sit with it as you fill out the survey. We know some people like to do that. And then bring it back to the Healing Justice resource space down on the lower level. This will help inform what the planning process looks like for this yet to be but already here Healing Justice convening.
And with that, thank you so much for holding these 90 minutes. The end. No, the beginning. There's also, they might be all gone, but there are some copies of the 2010 U.S. Social Forum Healing Justice Principles and the 2012 AMC Healing Justice Principles. And if you get your email on my computer that's going around, we'll send you a lot of stuff, including the How to Make a Healing Justice Practice Space, beautiful document dedicated to charity gigs that a lot of us made, and and a whole lot of other things. I'm just gonna stop, but there's a whole lot of shit we're gonna email you. It's gonna be great.
In the meantime, if you're really excited about guides, check out justhealing.wordpress.com. There's all these special guides related to healing justice work on that website. So go there.
Yeah.